Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Fog. I'm your host, Laurabel Mba, and today's episode, I get the chance to discuss all that is going on when it comes to labor with the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor, Jessica McCornick. So sit back, relax, and we'll find out what's going on in the world of labor. Welcome back, everyone. I'm now joined by Jessica McCornick, who is the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor. Jessica, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Laurabel.
So, Jess, the world. Basically, that is, for all the people listening, first I'll get a chance, let's introduce who the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor is.
Sure.
Who's that?
So we are the representative organization of 70,000 unionized workers across the province in every sector of the economy. And we do work every day to advocate for working people, whether they are union members or not. So a lot of our efforts and focus is around provincial legislation and the provincial government, but we do work that affects federal government. We organize in the community, and everything that we do tries to benefit and advance the rights of working people everywhere.
So with that in mind, the current state of the economy, the world, the workforce, how is that directly impacting workers in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Yeah. The world is in a state right now, and we are not immune in Newfoundland and Labrador. Things are very precarious, very chaotic by design. I think that is exactly what Donald Trump intends to create, is that type of chaos. So for the past couple of months, there's been a lot of uncertainty for working people. Workers in Newfoundland and Labrador will absolutely be impacted by tariffs, and it's day to day, week to week, wondering whether they will be implemented, whether the tariffs will be lifted, when is the next deadline that we have to work towards. And so all of that uncertainty has created a lot of, I think, stress and strain for workers. So in Newfoundland and Labrador, there are a number of industries that would be affected, whether you're somebody who works in the fishery, which is very dependent on trade with the United States, or somebody who works in manufacturing, in mining, in forestry. There are many other industries, but all of these people will see potentially some direct impacts. Not to mention the people who, operate a grocery store in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, whose, a big part of their business is reliant on a thriving fishery, for example. And so uncertainty around that means uncertainty for those small businesses and those workers. So all of it is very stressful. Can't understate that. It's been good to see so many people kind of rally together and support one another and kind of have this united front to push for real solutions to protect working people should these tariffs come to pass. So that's been really great. But we're also in a time of political uncertainty provincially and federally. So how does that impact all of this? So there's a lot to unpack, but that's like a general kind of state of affairs for where things are at with the tariffs right now.
I think you're going to be running this interview, so you're leading into my next question. We are in a state of political uncertainty. We have 4 elections this year. We have a federal, a provincial, a municipal. Now we have a leadership race for the provincial government. We just finished a leadership race for the federal government. What does that mean for the work the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor is doing when it comes to advocacy, pushing the needle ahead? How is that impacting the work that's being done?
Yeah, well, our organization and unions across the board have always been really engaged politically because we know that, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So you need to be active and engaged in politics at all levels. And so we are always preparing for these elections, but the way that things are all kind of lining up to happen in short succession makes things very uncertain and stressful, I think. It's really important for workers to understand understand that even at the municipal level, being active in those campaigns can have a real impact on your workplace, on your community, whether it's in terms of, you know, public infrastructure and public services. That's really key. So we're, you know, gearing up for that fall municipal election. Provincially, we've got a race, as you said, to replace the leader of the Liberal Party. So we'll be watching very closely who else comes forward, you know, what we know about those people already in terms of their interactions with workers and unions and what their track record is, and really putting a lot of pressure on them with respect to tariffs to maintain some of the good work that Premier Furey has done on this front. You know, he's brought stakeholders together in this Premier's Roundtable. Other provinces and territories haven't necessarily done that, like brought all of these stakeholders together. So that's really key. We want to make sure that that is maintained. And then we'll be prepared for an election whenever that happens, making sure that, you know, our issues, workers' issues, are front and center. And it's not just about tariffs. You know, the Churchill Falls MOU, that's going to be really important to working people, to knowing, you know, what those jobs might look like, when they will come online, whether or not we have the skills and the workers here to meet that demand. So there's a lot of issues there, not to mention pay equity, which we've been really vocal on at the Federation of Labor, childcare access and good wages for early childhood educators, you know, investments in public services. So there's, you know, so many issues that we really focus our provincial advocacy on. And then, you know, we're in the midst of, or coming up to, a federal election.
Absolutely.
And so it's so important for us to know that we have a federal government that is truly going to lead the charge to protect workers. Like, at the top of the list, it has to be protections for workers when it comes to responding to the tariffs. And so we saw Mark Carney get elected in the leadership race, and I expect that a federal election will be called very soon, if not in the coming days, certainly in the coming weeks. And so it'll be very interesting to see where that goes, because, you know, the Conservatives federally were riding high in the polls up until this tariff crisis. And so to see where working people kind of fall when it comes to an election will be interesting, because the Liberals are on the upswing in how they've responded to tariffs.
So with a new leader, and like, these are very adamant, important conversations to be having right now. So we do have a new leader for the Liberal Federal Party, which means we now have a new Prime Minister. What does that mean at this current point for workers in Newfoundland and Labrador? We know the provincial government's relationship with the federal government has not always been a good relationship, and sometimes we've had disagreements, and sometimes we've been trying to hold them, their feet to the fire, to be accountable to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. What does this change, not a full change, but a slight change in person, mean for workers in this province?
Yeah, I think we still need to get to know who Mark Carney is, and there's a little bit of uncertainty about him, I think, and all of the things that he might represent. You know, I've listened to a little bit of the debates and what he's been saying about, you know, his positioning on certain issues, and there's certainly a divergence from where Justin Trudeau had been on some issues. And I think it'll be really important to see him understand Newfoundland and Labrador. You know, his background is at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. He's not been an elected politician before, so and he isn't elected yet to a seat. But making sure that he understands what the issues are for people in Newfoundland and Labrador, I think, will be really key. And that's been important to us historically, right? Feeling like the people up Long in Ottawa don't get what's happening here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So the relationship between the provincial and federal government is crucial. And as you said, Laurabel, you know, we have a federal Liberal government and a provincial Liberal government, but they haven't always lined up in their policies or in their positions. So I think the next few weeks and months are going to be so important for the people that I represent, for workers, because there's so much at stake, whether it's tariffs, whether it's affordability. You know, we know the cost of goods is going to go up with the tariff impacts. So making sure that we have strong representatives will be crucial, and that is why it is so important for people to be active in these elections.
So when we call for people to be active, especially as the Federation of Labor, because I think sometimes people have this misconstrued idea of what labor is, and they think of the blue collar work. But if you are employed in any aspect of the economy, you are in the workforce, you are part of the labor movement. when we talk about getting people engaged in political process, how is the Newfoundland Labrador Federation of Labor pushing that dial?
Yeah. So how we think about it is that it doesn't just happen around the election campaign. We want to make sure that our members are politically engaged and active in between elections. So that happens through the education that we do and through the training that we do with our members. It happens at our conventions, and we had an amazing guest speaker in you at our last convention in the fall. And we try to inject that politics into the work that we do to help people understand that their wages, occupational health and safety, if they're concerned about the environment, if they're feeling that they're having trouble getting access to childcare, all of those things that affect them in the workplace, politics has an impact on that. So we try to get people active in between those election cycles. And then during the election, we really push the candidates and parties to talk about our issues. So we do that through our lobbying. We do that through surveys that we send out to all of the political parties. We host debates with the party leaders and with candidates to kind of put the questions directly to them. And then in these upcoming elections, we're going to be giving our members tools and questionnaires that they can ask people on the doorstep. Because that's when it gets really tough. You get somebody knocking at your door and they're looking for your vote. Well, that's the greatest opportunity to kind of ask them where they stand on what's important to you. So we're going to give people some information and tools that they can use in those ways too.
So we're going to be going to a commercial break in a second, and I just kind of want to set people up for what the conversation is going to be about when we get back. So at your convention, you get the chance to hear from people in the workforce and people who are part of the movement. So when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about what is the conversation like? What are people saying are their key issues? And what are the things that you as an organization are currently able to do as a stopgap measure until the powers that be actually do the work? So before we go to our break, if you had one thing to let people know why they should come back for the rest of this conversation, what would it be?
Wow. One thing I would say that, whether you are a union member or not, the stakes are really high right now. So you should come back and hear what I'm hearing from my members, and more importantly, what we can do about those issues.
And that's fantastic. All right, folks. Take this as a chance to refill your coffee, get another glass of water. We'll be right back with the rest of this conversation with Jessica McCornick, who is part of the Newfoundland Federation of Labor. She's, in fact, the president. All right, and we'll see you folks in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I'm still joined by Jess McCormick, who is the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor. Jess, I'm still glad to have you here to continue this conversation. So before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about what goes on at conferences, what goes on at these spaces where workers come together to talk about their issues. So what are the issues that are on the minds of workers today?
Yeah, so just to give a bit of context for what those meetings look like. So, the labor movement is a democratic movement, and so we represent 70,000 workers in 500 union locals right across the province. And so those workplaces that are unionized elect their representatives, and those folks come to our meetings, and we debate and discuss all the policies and issues that impact our members. And so when we are at a convention or at a union meeting, we hear, across the gamut, the issues that people are facing, whether it's around their wages and benefits, whether it's around occupational health and safety, making sure that people come home safe at the end of the day. That is such a key part of the work that we do in the labor movement, and really advocating for policies that protect workers. We do a lot of work around workers' compensation. So we hear from people about what their experiences are like when they've been injured on the job and returning to work and making sure that that system works for workers. That's a really big piece of what we hear from people. Not to mention just the other issues that people care about in their lives at work and outside of work, whether it's the environment and climate change, whether it's childcare and pay equity and gender equity. We've been doing a lot of work lately around violence in the workplace and trying to make sure that we have the structures and protections in place to particularly protect people who experience a lot of violence in healthcare settings. So we've seen an uptick in that in recent years. So we've heard a lot from our members who are working in hospitals, long-term care, retirement care facilities, home care, for sure, who are seeing more violence in the workplace and needing, that support from the labor movement. So those are the kind of conversations that we have at our conventions and our meetings. We always try to bring in, great guest speakers, people like yourself, as I said, but also economists to talk about the state of the economy across Canada and how that impacts you here in Newfoundland and Labrador. We've had experts come in to talk about climate change, but also about the job opportunities in the green economy, because people have questions about that too, right? They hear a lot about climate change, how it's impacting them at work in terms of rising temperatures and weather, but also, that transition to a green economy. What does that look like? What are the skills that'll be needed? What kind of jobs will they be? Will they be good paying jobs? Those are the questions that I hear from our members, and that's what I like to try to bring back to the Federation and address through the work that we're doing.
And so the work that you're doing, what does that currently look like? What's the landscape looking like for you folks?
So from the, certainly municipal context, in the labor movement, we have district labor councils, so Labrador West, Corner Brook, Central, St. John's, right across the province. We have these amazing labor councils made up of, rank and file, frontline workers who get together and focus on community issues. They're the people that organize the Day of Mourning, which honors workers who have been killed or injured on the job later on in April. They're the folks who organize Labor Day, so they're really focused on the municipal level, and so we try to use those organizations, that kind of community level structure to address municipal issues. On the provincial landscape, that's where a lot of my time is spent. So as of late, it's been really focused around the tariffs and making sure that we have the proper policies and programs in place, both provincially and federally, to support workers. But we've also been talking a lot about how easy it is or not easy it is for workers to unionize here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And it is incredibly difficult to unionize here in this province. So we've been focused on, reforming the legislation to make it easier for people to join a union. There's already a democratic process when you sign that union card and say that you want to become a member of a union. You shouldn't have to take another step of having a vote. There's a lot of people who face a lot of pressure and backlash sometimes from employers when they try to unionize. So we've been looking at that system and trying to make it easier for people. And then for those who are already unionized, going through various processes with the Labor Relations Board, we've been focused on trying to reform that to make it an easier process that really centers the needs and the concerns of workers. In addition to thinking about the labor market strategy that we have for this province and what the workforce demands will be in the next 5-10 years and whether or not we're prepared for those, in addition to talking about pay equity and pay transparency. The province passed legislation a couple of years ago, but we're still waiting on regulations and real pay equity, particularly for women and gender diverse people working in the private sector. So no shortage of provincial issues. And then federally, employment insurance, so important to people in Newfoundland and Labrador, especially seasonal workers. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on that program in the current context, but also longstanding issues that we focus on. So it's a lot of advocacy and lobbying. And then our office actually has 4 staff that are worker advisors. So they work day to day to support injured workers in navigating workers' compensation, in appealing decisions, and getting them the support that they need. So that's another key piece of the work that we do.
Wow. You do so much, and there's still so much left to be done. So earlier in this episode, we talked about the state of the elections. And there's a lot of elections coming up. So if you were making pleas to government, which you are, you're advocating on the rights of workers constantly. So what are the pleas that you're making to government on a municipal level, on a provincial level, and how are you working with other federations of labor across the country to advocate on a federal level?
Yeah, I'm so lucky to be a part of the Canadian Labour Congress that connects me with workers' organizations and unions right across the country. And across the board, we are facing so many of the same issues when it comes to affordability and how that impacts our members, how it impacts working people. So we're really focused on making sure that, one, it's easy to join a union, because we know that is the most powerful tool that workers have to secure better wages and benefits and safer working conditions. But we're also really focused on making sure that we have the other policies in place to prepare for the workforce of the future and what those jobs might look like, and making sure that workers have a seat at the table at all levels of government when decisions are being made. So that means consultation, but I also think it means electing workers, municipally, provincially, and federally. If you care about your workplace, if you care about the issues, put yourself forward and know that you will have a union that stands behind you and has your back. I think that's really key. But bigger picture, Laurabel, I think that we're at a really crucial time, not just in our province, but in our country. And in the labor movement, we're always talking about what work has to come next. What is the next thing that we need to secure for workers? What is the next thing that we need to lobby on? And my perspective on it all right now is we actually need to be really focused on not regressing. We need to protect the gains that we've made. We're seeing a real upswing in, anti-worker rhetoric. We're seeing, a backslide, certainly in the US, but we are not immune to that in Canada. So we need to be really focused, not just on moving forward, but protecting what we've done historically for workers. And so that is the mindset that I have going into these elections, is making sure we don't go back, that we keep going forward.
So for the people watching right now who have been inspired, invigorated by all the things you've shared, how do they find out more about the Newfoundland Labrador Federation of Labor?
So my first suggestion is to talk to your coworkers, right? Okay. If you have a union in your workplace, find out who your shop steward is, find out who your local president is, get involved at that grassroots level. That's going to really benefit you in the long term, becoming more active in your union. If you feel like you're not represented, get in there and get involved and be the change that you want to see at the local level. And then provincially, visit our website, nlfl.nf.ca. All of the information on our injured worker program is there. You can find out more about our campaigns to get involved. And if you're not unionized, call us. We can connect you with union organizers and we can help you secure your rights in the workplace. But, my main piece of advice always is talk to your coworkers. Don't go to work every day feeling disenchanted, frustrated, disappointed, and not talk to somebody about it. You will find allies in your colleagues, and that is the best way. That is the first step to seeing, a positive change in your workplace, is getting out there and talking to people.
And now to elected officials who are tuning in because we're out of the fog and they have to.
Yes.
What do you want them to know about the call from workers at every corner, every edge of this province? What should they be doing?
I think that elected officials at every level of government need to get out there and talk to workers, talk to working people. We are the people who make the economy run in this province and in this country. There is nothing, no public service that wouldn't be delivered without workers, no, private industry that wouldn't operate without workers. We are the people that make the economy works, and we need to see our issues reflected in you, in your platforms, in the policies that you implement. We need to have a seat at the table. So when you're building your platforms and when you're thinking about what the next steps are when you form government, make sure that there's a worker at that table giving you advice and guiding you in that right direction, because we are your constituents. We make up your communities, and our issues matter, and I think a lot of times we don't see that reflected in the decision making that we see at various levels of government. And so hopefully we can really use our collective power to push these elected officials in the right direction.
And then my very last question is speaking to one particular group of workers, young workers who a lot of the time feel disenfranchised from their workspaces. What do you want to let them know?
Well, I am 37. When I was elected to this position, I was 35. So in the labor movement, we considered that a young worker, though it didn't always, I don't feel young some days, especially in this Trump era. But, you know, I saw an opportunity. I saw that I wasn't represented in the leadership of the labor movement all the time. You know, young people, we don't see ourselves reflected in decision makers all the time. And as a young queer woman, especially, I was like, you know, not seeing some of the issues that I cared about, you know, on the agenda. And I put myself forward for this position. And part of the goal that I have is just trying to get more young workers engaged and involved. A lot of young workers don't have a union, so I really want to work to make it easier for people to unionize and understand how that can benefit them, how that can benefit you in the workplace. And then I want people to get involved in their unions to really change the face and change the shape of our labor movement, to make it more representative of all the diversity of working people right across the country.
Jess, we could spend hours upon hours getting into the nitty-gritty, but I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come and chat to us. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back, everyone. I want to thank all of you for tuning in yet again. It's always a pleasure getting to share time and space with you. I want to give an extra special thank you and shout out to my guest, Jessica McCornick, for talking to us about what's going on with the labor force movement here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and for telling us how we can get more engaged. I can't wait to see you all again next time.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
We want to hear from you. Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Call, email us, or scan the QR code to take our quick survey.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
My dad was a railway porter. It was just about the only job a black man could get. But he had big plans for us. Music would be our ticket out of poverty. I knew we couldn't afford that piano, so I practiced twice as hard.
Nice, Daisy. Okay, Oscar, let's hear it.
Turns out, I wasn't half bad. Then I found jazz, or it found me. It wasn't all easy, though. I faced a lot of hate, but I found my stage. They call me the man with 4 hands. Well, I don't know about that, but let's see how far this ticket takes me.
From Montreal to Carnegie Hall and far beyond, Oscar Peterson became one of the most recorded and celebrated jazz musicians of all time.
You called us in, meaning you suspect foul play.